Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises posts a sad reminder for you all today. All you fun little boys and girls, post an F in chat, because Kabosu, also known as Kabo-chan, or to many of you known as Doge, passed away today. That spunky little Shiba Inu herself, 18 years old. God bless and Godspeed.
Mm-hmm. Now, we are back once again with our continued look at Gubat-Banwa, one that will not have as many sidebars as we did last time. And this time around, we're technically still in the how do you play chapter, but we are focusing primarily on the playing a Kadungganan.
Yep.
Because this is where we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of things. Although I will note it can be a bit confusing on the layout because we have because playing a Kadungganan is a subsection of the How Do You Play chapter, but it also has its own chapter all to itself.
Yes.
And I know why it's done. It just messes with me. But it opens up by saying that it is gallantry and passion, honor and obligation, conviction and violence. Oh. The first thing right after that it goes into is the law of rosy gold, which is talking about the concept of fiction, which is basically saying everybody needs to be on the same page. Uh, and basically, it's not trying to simulate reality, which honestly should I always figured was a non-starter. Um, and it goes into what you'll need. Obviously, players, dice. We are using the full gamut of polyhedral dice. A Kadungganan sheets, character sheet, and the like.
Hmm.
And then we get to the core mechanic in the form of divine the powers. And this is where I'll let you take over.
All right. When you do something that is risky, dramatic, or violent, collect a single 12-sided die, d12, known as your skill die, and 4 8-sided dice, d8s, known as the divination dice. This is known as divining the powers. Risky might be running across a rooftop in the midst of a monsoon, attempting to stop an oncoming flood with a boulder, or trying to change a god's mind. Dramatic might be resisting the urge to slap your second husband across the face in the midst of a ritual festival, choosing to expose your father to a committee of kings, tearfully asking your lover to give up her ideals. Violent might be unleashing an assault of blades and steel, uttering okay, this is a word that I very, very, very rarely see used, and I love it. Ululating or ululating, depending on which version of English you want to say. I'm going to say ululating. Incantations to send bolts of fire, persuading someone with martial fists and words. There's a little bit of a sidebar here that says, remember, you do not roll unless the action is already inherently risky.
That is something I think a lot of people end up overlooking. You're only supposed to roll dice when there's a risk of something dramatic happening or a risk of success/failure.
Yeah,
which is why the people doing spot checks every 5 feet always annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah. Well, and then the biggest thing is in some other systems we've talked about and might look into later, such as stealing stories for the devil. It literally says in that one, you only roll dice for, again, dramatic purposes, for actions that are dramatic, risky, or violent. And even then, you don't fail due to incompetence. You fail due to other factors, such as, oh, you were going to make the jump, but all of a sudden you notice that the gap is larger than it looked from your run-up, so you stop. Because you're supposed to be competent.
Yeah.
But,
fail forward is that school of thought, and it's one that I wholeheartedly endorse.
Yep. And
I'll go into it further another day, but for those who aren't aware, fail forward is the idea that the narrative doesn't stop just because you didn't succeed on a dice roll.
Yeah. And there's also a nice little other fluff sidebar here that says, when the priestesses need to divine the fate of a course of action, they cast the teeth of crocodiles or boar tusks. I like that. Dice were commonly made from teeth or even ivory, so makes sense. Then the next part, here is the step-by-step process to rolling. Choose the most relevant skill. Attempting to sway the hearts of men with an impassioned speech might let you add wrath, but trying to compel them with facts and reasoning might have you roll Psalm. And that's Psalm as in Psalm, for those who were wondering. Then collect the divination dice. This will decide how difficult your roll will be. Roll them together and then read every die. For every die that is an even result, that is a good omen. For every die that is an odd result, that is an ill omen. For every ill omen, add +2 to the base difficulty, and the base difficulty is 5. I like that.
Hmm.
I really like that. Tells you that your base difficulty is 5, and then you get +2 for every odd numbered die on the divination dice. Imagine if you roll all evens. Which, with 4d8s, I mean, it's pretty, that's a pretty good spread.
Hmm.
Then you roll your skill die. Add the relevant skill afterwards. If the final result is equal to or greater than the difficulty, that's a success. On a success, you get what you set out to do. If the roll is lower, that's a failure. On a failure, you don't achieve what you do, and you suffer consequences as established, or worse. Then 1, if the skill die is even, you gain an advantage even on a failure. This could be something that gives you something beneficial, a tool for the next roll, a better understanding of the situation. Keep it going. If your skill die is odd, then you gain a setback, even on a success. This could be some sort of odd twist that sets you back, makes things take longer than usual, warrants your unwanted attention, or changes the fiction.
Advantage and setback I can describe as the and but.
Yeah, it's failed, but, or you succeed, but,
Hmm.
you know, it's the whole what were they described as in Veil of the Void? Disadvantageous success and advantageous failure.
Yeah. Oh, so it's
Let me get to merit and demerit, and I'll leave that to you, Monk.
hmm. So then merit and demerit. In the game, merit is gained from specific advantages gained from the fiction. Sorry, carbonation. Very often, this comes from ancestor blessings, advantages, observing proper rituals. And observing proper rituals. Other times, it comes from the benefits of equipment, proper items, and special techniques. Demerits come from curses from witches, the disfavor of the gods, worse training, bad equipment, and overall worse situations. We have in its own colors. When you roll with merit, roll extra skill dice equal to the merit gained, then choose a single die as the final result. Similarly, for demerit, roll extra skill dice equal to the demerit gained. Choose the worst result, often the lowest number skill that is odd. But merit and demerit can stack up to 3 times. However, they cancel each other out. Having 2 merit and 3 demerit means you have net 1 demerit. Right, so we have our good old advantage disadvantage set up there. If an action is particularly perilous or dangerous, like running across a rooftop at night in the midst of a storm, impose a demerit. At the same time as decided by the fiction, if one is rolling using gear, equipment, or abilities that can help them, they can add +1 to the roll. And we have a brief example on that. Then we have Hearten. If you choose to support a fellow Kadungganan when they roll skill dice, define how and then give the Kadungganan merit to their roll. If they succeed, they become indebted to you. If they fail, ask them how they feel your support not being of much help. A roll can only benefit from one instance of Hearten.
So only one assistance can occur.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Thunderbolts. Now I'll let you take that.
All right. First on the I'll read the section and then I'll read the sidebar, which seems to be very much involved. There's a special kind of pride and emanation from Kadungganan and from powerful warriors of Gubat-Banwa. They are imbued with the strength of the Vajra, that diamond thunderbolt. All at once, they are powerful and indestructible. If anyone doesn't know what a Vajra is, go look up Vajra Buddhism. You'll actually see a scepter that Buddhists sometimes hold that is meant to imbue the Vajra of Indra, specifically, the Diamond Thunderbolt. At rank 1, you can only gain up to 5 Thunderbolts. At rank 2, you can only gain up to 7, and at rank 3, only up to 9. When you perform an action, you can describe that action in a cool, flowery, or dramatic way. If you do, gain a Thunderbolt. Gain a Thunderbolt for roleplay. Nice.
Stunt
Thunderbolts
bonus.
are the Yep. Thunderbolts are the Kadungganan's prowess, skill, and training bursting through, defying all odds. Thunderbolts are always born from a Kadungganan's effectivity, gumption, and grit. Effectivity is not a word, it'd be efficaciousness, but I digress. It is them resisting the wiles of the world. For actions that don't need rolls, such as rushing in combat or pushing, you can describe it in a cool or flowery way to immediately gain one Thunderbolt. For actions that do need rolls, such as attacks or skill rolls, you must describe the action after the roll is resolved, knowing the result of the roll. So you could even describe your failure being cool or badass or flowery some way and still get Thunderbolts. In combat, your discipline philosophy details your Thunderbolt generation mechanics. Discipline philosophies are things we'll get into later, much later, like a different week later.
Mm-hmm.
In play, Kadungganan can also gain Thunderbolts by performing obeisances and observing spiritual traditions and rites. For example, going to a Balyan to bless their journey before going out on an adventure might give the Kadungganan one Thunderbolt each. Finally, another common way to gain Thunderbolts is to surrender to your character's passions and have it bring you deeper into drama and turmoil. The rules for passions are covered in the drama chapter. Or the drama section, I'm not sure which.
Mm-hmm.
Thunderbolts are per character, and they keep them over sessions. Spend one Thunderbolt to re-roll any roll, whether that be damage or skill dice, but never the divination dice. So once you've rolled your difficulty, you can't re-roll that, but you can re-roll other stuff. Spend two Thunderbolts to change something about the situation as befitting the fiction. In combat, this can be used to introduce one thing, such as a change in terrain, new object, or change in the weather. Spend three Thunderbolts during their riff in violence to gain +1 beat. You can only gain up to 5 beats in any riff. Mm-hmm. Violence is a dance, and I love this. Hi-Fi Rush, is that you? And then the sidebar has lightning flashes of inspiration. The blade step. Describe your defense and posture as you flipping, parrying mid-corkscrew, and then landing on the enemy's blade. Silver tongue trickery. Describe your reasoning in a way that overwhelms your opponent without giving them time to think, revealing your deductions like unsheathing a blade. Lost sibling. Reveal to the king that you are in fact their long-lost sister, just as they execute you for not following orders. Mm-hmm. The Dance of Knives. Describe your rush as you throwing knives into the bamboo wall and then running up them to get to a higher vantage. I like that.
Yep. Then we have Gaba. Nemesis, Divine Fury, Divine Retribution. The curse of the beings of the land, the elementals, the spirits that cannot be seen, those unlike us. They control the world always. Remember, Gaba works as a sort of reverse thunderbolt. They are gained when you perform taboos against the natural world. It can be seen as a sort of negative karma that arises from actions that do not appease the spirits. Gaba is accrued as tokens and persists for the entire cycle. There's only one pool of Gaba against all Kadungganan. It stays across downtime and across sessions. You can shed Gaba by spending time in a ritual to pray to the ancestors or to the gods of your faith. You gain Gaba when you finish an adventure and return to downtime. Everyone accrues some form of Gaba just for doing things in the world. This is because we simply share the world with the larger societies and civilizations of spirits that we cannot see and will never understand. The world is beyond us always. Trick or blaspheme against the gods of nature. Forget to perform rituals while in particular holy places. Encroach upon or perform activities within places of the world without proper permission from the beings that lie within. Kill a warrior that they were not in a battle with. Kill a powerful being of great renown. Then spending Gaba. At any point, any player can choose to spend one Gaba to do the following, as long as they follow the fiction. In general, spending Gaba lets you impose a hard narrative shift and or consequences. Enforce a consequence of one of their actions. They have attracted unwanted attention. Cancel any Thunderbolt expenditure, 1 for 1. Reroll any dice rolled by NPCs, but never divination dice. Change the current situation in some way following established fiction. In combat, introduce a new enemy, object, terrain, or change the weather.
So GABA is a shared pool of calamities.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that if you're playing in the traditional fashion that was described when we first read that, there was the solo play and then the duet play or the rotating GM play. But if you play with an established GM and a party, I imagine the GABA pool would be, in many cases, relegated to them.
Mm-hmm.
That way they can use it as a narrative flux with the players.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next section is called Moons. The moon is a tool used to gauge accumulated progress to a certain fictional happening. Use this when having to resolve something that requires more than a single roll and requires several actions to see it through. When the rules tell you to create a moon, doodle a circle and separate it into crescents. The most common is 4 crescents. If a certain activity is difficult or takes a long time, it might be 6 crescents. If it's extremely hard and or takes a really long time, it might be 8 crescents. This should be named specifically with the goal in mind, the palace or the raiders. The crescents should be about the obstacle or event and not the method. Afterward, define what crescents mean in the context of the moon. Each moon is different. For example, a king's kris, wherein each crescent represents a step in the progress of crafting the king's kris. In contrast, a prince's settlement moon, wherein each crescent represents the village getting more and more agitated by the presence of the Kadungganan as the Kadungganan tries to find more information. They actually have a good example here that I'm going to read out just so it makes more sense. There are raiders outside of your village that are planning on raiding it. You want to face this problem, so you mark it out as an 8-crescent impending moon. This means that whenever you fail a catch or consequence, you fill in a crescent representing the imminent danger of the raiders. A crescent can also be filled in according to the fiction. If the Kadungganan do nothing of importance and only dally, fill in a crescent to remind them of the impending arrival of the raiders. There are 3 potential things that might help the Kadungganan: secure choke points, ask help from an Akai outpost, and perform a proper ritual to the mountain gods. Each one becomes a moon in itself, linked to the raider moon. Each one is 4 crescents: choke points, Akai outpost, and mountain god ritual. Each one is a progress moon, meaning each crescent represents progress done to finishing what they want. Instead, they fill in crescents on the raider moon, representing the imminent danger of the raiders as the Kadungganan scramble to get help for the raiders.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting...
It is basically the clock system that's used in, say, Blades in the Dark.
Yep. And then there's a small ending here. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, though, the raiders will arrive more or less. It's all a matter of how well protected the village will be when they arrive.
Mm-hmm. And after that, there's a short list of different types of moons, basically using the moon concept in different contexts.
Yep.
I do remember Notepad saying he's not a fan of the clock system, though. I never figured out why. I'm always neutral on it. I mean, it's just a countdown system. I've been using those since I was first introduced to the tick system that's used for World of Darkness.
Yeah. The kinds of moons they describe are the impending moon, which is something that slowly fills up as a danger or threat comes closer. The progress moon, which is, of course, working towards an ultimate goal or project. The phasing moon is described as a tug-of-war sort of progress with back and forth. And phasing moons are unique in that they can lose crescents. And if the Kadungganan is at 0 crescents and does something that causes them to lose another crescent, then they lose the ability to fill that moon, and they're blocked off from that action. So they'd have to do something different. And then dueling moons is a sort of head-to-head progress moon. 2 people or two groups, two whatever, coming together with competing moons, and whoever's moon fills first wins their goal. Can be used for races and duels, but it could also be used for two people investigating the same crime, and whoever gets the most clues first wins, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, they have a faction moon, which they say is mostly optional, but it can be used to simulate a dynamic world. And they can assign faction moons that they think are relevant for the game. And each faction moon acts as a clock for the factions and what the factions might be doing while the Kadungganan is in downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Like treaties between kingdoms and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Now, next is honor. In the archipelago of the Sword Isles, there is no uniform coinage, though larger metropolises do have them, such as the Gubat-Banwa silvers, the jade pieces from Ba'e, Akai gold coins, and taels, which has common uses in the metropolis of Gadusan. However, due to the inherent and vast interconnectedness of the Sword Isles, there is no single currency. Instead, warriors and kings deal in honor. In the Sword Isles, goods are exchanged for either other goods or services. As Kadungganan, your main form of gaining goods is rendering service to Rajas, especially if you are still a new warrior who has not yet made a name for themselves. Honor can be used for wealth. Spending honor is giving your promise, but you can only promise so much. While you cannot spend honor, that's when you start bartering your items. Honor is your social status. The higher honor you have, the more dependable people will find you. Only those with high honor can become kings. Only the most honorable warrior can become Chakravarti. As a Kadungganan, you begin with 5 honor. Honor is expected to fluctuate very easily, yet you cannot have more than 10 honor. Honor is commonly used to influence others. When you ask something from someone that they would feasibly do, example, giving you something they sell, granting you an estate, giving you retainers, fighting on your side, you may spend a number of honor equal to what they ask for. Their disposition can be changed accordingly to what you do in the fiction, but some hearts are steel and tempered by conviction. Then we have a brief disposition and honor to spend example set up. So something they're likely to do because they like you, it's easy for them, etc., 1 honor. Something that they must think about because it is difficult for them or they do not particularly like you, 3 honor. Something they're not likely to do at all because they don't like you or it's an impossible task, 5 honor. And we have the fact your honor fluctuates. If your honor ever hits 0 or lower, you become a true villain. Your Kadungganan becomes a non-player character. This means that Kadungganan can lose all honor while being at high legend. That is what makes for true infamy. You lose honor when you break a promise, kill someone meritorious, are defeated in violence, suffer consequences, break a social taboo, blaspheme someone important, inflict violence indiscriminately without proper conviction, are accused of doing something dishonorable, or voluntarily choose not to follow your conviction. You gain honor when you accomplish victory in violence, achieve an optional objective in violence, find a truth about the world, perform a task for someone higher than you, earn the favor of kings, prove your loyalty to another, engage in violence in line with your conviction, passions, and complications, prove that you are trustworthy, or choose your conviction even to the detriment of others. I would heavily advise to any GM playing this in regards to this system, do not be that guy. Anybody who's had to deal with that guy during the question of whether or not a virtue has to be tested in, say, Exalted, knows of that guy, as well as anyone who's ever had to deal with that guy when it comes to the Paladin question.
Fall or die, bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we hate those GMs.
And I do want to make clear, sometimes that guy is not a guy, but everybody hates that guy. Fuck that guy.
Yep. We all know someone who's been like that before.
Mm-hmm.
But with that in mind, we are now moving on to barter. When you want to buy something, you commonly must give an item of similar value. This is dictated by the trader or person you're selling the item to. Their values are dictated by their material conditions. A fishing settlement might not care much for saltwater fish, but mountain cities might find saltwater fish to be a premium. In general, the following are almost always high-value items, as they are foreign prestige goods. Weapons, armor, gongs, gold icons, servant bonds, service, porcelains, silvers, boats. Honor lets you barter easier. Often people will want something exactly equal in value in their eyes when you want something. If you want a sword, then you must trade something equally important back, perhaps like a slave. However, if you have honor, you can haggle. If you have honor of at least one, you can spend that honor to add +1 merit to any cast. I think it means rolling, as in casting dice, related to haggling with the person. Sometimes, if you're honorable enough, you can get away with simply spending honor, representing you giving the merchant your goodwill and promise. If you do return to the merchant with the goods they wish, you recover all honor lost from buying the item. So at high enough honor, you can make a pawn shop joke. Okay, got it. It's also a common weight values, but first I'll need to read standard currency for it to make sense. Generally, there is no standard currency in the Isles. Common items such as foodstuffs, salt, deerskin, and the like are simply bartered. However, in large trading cities and port towns, most of the major cities of the Mahamandalas, they commonly use taels, that's Tael, as a measure of weight. This is an easy way to quantify the value of something. A boat might cost 10 tael of gold, for example. Debtor bonds might cost 30 tael of cowries in gold each. Gold pieces and cowrie are the common items used to weigh items. And there's common weight values. Boats are 10 tael, bonds are 50 to 60 tael, deerskin are 12, exotic beasts are 25, gongs are 45, porcelains are 40, pottery is 3, sacks of rice are 5, textiles are 10, weapons are 30 to 40, and wild cats are 15. Mountain settlements, for example, might consider fish and salt essential items, but they might consider rice, something they harvest and export, as abundant items. Gaining abundant items are easy, but things that are commonly considered valuable or treasure in the Isles require specialized merchants and traders to gain, but are signs of wealth. Richard Datu might want to establish good connections with you if you showcase treasure on you, such as foreign armor. Foreigners would usually count what is just commodities to Sword Isles folk as necessities. Pearls in the Sword Isles might be abundant, pretty ones nevertheless, and used as jewelry, but they are treasured in Baikhu and Iamat. Clay pots are abundant in the Isles, but Iamat folk treat them as essentials due to their ability to store tea leaves. Then, common barter items. If you want to randomize, roll 2d8, setting one die as the tens place and the other as the ones place. So it's a d88 from 11 to 88.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a big old list of them. I'm not going to read that list. That's a lot of things.
Although I will note I appreciate that some of the names in here, the less obvious ones to an English speaker, have something of a pronunciation guide.
Well, yeah, and then of course we still have the generic rules from earlier of, any vowel A sound is pronounced as ah, any vowel I sound is pronounced as e.
Mm-hmm.
Any vowel E sound is pronounced as eh. Any vowel O sound is pronounced as O. And any vowel U sound is pronounced as U, unless specifically noted otherwise. Yep. That's why I have not been saying Banwa, because in the pronunciation guide, it's shown as Bunwa.
Mm-hmm.
But
so next we have debt.
Oof.
Debt is used to denote someone's personal obligation to someone else for doing something for them. In the Sword Isles, debt is such a ubiquitous concept that entire polities and villages are formed around debt, and social classes are created from it. Slaves and servants are usually nothing but people who owe debt to their masters. Debt in Gubat-Banwa is a social value and mechanic to show how much leverage you have over someone or how much leverage someone has on you. You usually gain debt to someone when they do something for you, such as give you an item, grant you protection, food, or even interact with you romantically. And we have debt mechanics. The following debt actions must follow the fiction. An important note is that both non-player characters can also gain debt from Kadungganan, which means they can also influence you with debt. Then accruing debt. When a character does an entity a solid, help them when they're in dire straits, give them gifts, or otherwise both parties agree that one of them owes the other, the character becomes indebted to them. If a character is already indebted to them, they become obligated to them instead. If they're already obligated, they become bonded. When a character is indebted to someone, while a character is indebted to someone, when the character they're indebted to asks them something, they are inclined to do it. If the indebted character does not do it, they become obligated to that person. A bonded character is considered completely indebted to the person they owe. Anytime a bonded character chooses not to do what the person they owe wants them to do, they lose honor. If they're an NPC, this is grounds for death. Bonded characters often become vassals, concubines, followers, henchmen, bondsmen. Entire villages arise from bonded fighters. When you wish to pay off your debts, speak with the person you wish to pay off. They can choose one from below. They can ask you to do something for you, whatever it must be. They can ask something from you that you must pay. This can be land, servants, weapons, anting, or any other important thing. If you do it, you downgrade your debt to that character by 1 level. Bonded becomes obligated, and obligated becomes indebted. If they're already indebted, they are no longer indebted to the person they owe. Alternatively, you can spend honor to lower your debt level to someone by 1 rank. The honor needed to be spent will be dictated by the one you're indebted to. Then we have transferring debt. When you wish to transfer the debt someone owes you to someone else, say your reason and how much debt you wish to transfer, and then transfer that much debt that the person owes to you, but to the other person. You can use this to feasibly gain goodwill from others, as debt can be used as a form of currency in the Isles.
I happen to have this woman here who is trained very well in musical arts, who's bonded to me. I will transfer the debt she owes me to you in return for, I don't know, a military boat. That's probably something you could do.
Mm-hmm.
Trading people for stuff.
I know in this kind of situation, I should ask about the example ranges when it comes to honor cost, but we already have that taken care of.
Yep, that's up in the earlier table.
Mm-hmm. So
next is convictions.
Mm-hmm.
All things must be brought to the sword. Your conviction decides why you fight. Your conviction is broad and long-term. This is what your life is built around. The most common uses of your conviction is when you choose to follow it to the detriment of others, in which case you gain honor and thunderbolts, but you drive yourself deeper into the mire of war and violence. Will you ever survive? The most common way to use conviction is invoking it when you are defeated, that is, when you suffer 5 wounds. While defeated, you can invoke how your conviction helps you hold on, but you must change it by the next session. And we have our passions. Your Kadungganan's passions are immediate wants and needs. They follow it first and are always aligned with their conviction. Passions are the most fluid of the Kadungganan's traits. If something happens in the fiction that convinces you to change your passion, roll control, tenderness, or poetry. On a failure or a setback, you must change that passion. Sometimes when playing with an Umala god, they may invoke your conviction, telling a Kadungganan if they would like to act in a certain way. This is a common way for the Umala god to give an opportunity to the Kadungganan for drama. They will almost always be rewarded with thunderbolts. Remember, thunderbolts are integral to violence and succeeding actions. Then we have complications. Complications are the most complex part of a Kadungganan, but also the most influential. Kadungganan will always act in accordance and reaction to their complications. The one they hate attends the feast. They will do everything they can to avoid them, to the detriment of their plans. And then the small section here says, the River of Glory. At the start of a session, do some bookkeeping. Each Kadungganan must check their complications, convictions, and passions, keeping in mind everything that has happened to them so far. Decide if they keep them the same if nothing has changed. Else they must change that complication, conviction, or those passions accordingly. Kadungganan are constantly evolving. Similarly, warband convictions must be checked at the start of every session. Warband convictions might grow out and become dissonant with the Kadungganan's convictions. This is by design. This leads to more drama, to more conflict that must be solved, or else they will fall to Gubat-Banwa.
Mm-hmm. And right after that is adventuring, which is a brief bit about why how Kadungganan would adventure.
It also uses the points of light system.
Mm-hmm. Which points of light was a concept that I first was introduced to in D&D 4th edition, where instead of doing this whole half in half out, there was a much stronger implication of setting within that edition compared to previous, which is why I'm fond of it. The idea of points of light is that there are settlements that are havens in between all-encompassing darkness, all-encompassing untamed areas, and this is used as a very strong theme all throughout. There was the whole theme of the ruins of a human empire, but that's a whole other story that I will get to another day, because I really do need to do a reflecting on 4th edition stream one of these days. I know we did the grading 4E classes, but I want to go further than that sometime down the road, especially given all the games that have been taking inspiration from it in the last 10 years. But there's also the concept of repose, which is a short rest, essentially. As well as vistas, which are described as events and locations. Then the fact that every adventure has at least one objective, as well as the concept of grand objectives. There's also the concept of the law of journeys. And this one I do think I'd want to read out. When you gather your equipment, ships, servants, and the like to travel across the Sea of Violence, decide how far and how dangerous the destination is from where you are. Near shores, not too far, create a 4-crescent moon. Middle shores, a bit further. The island is 3 to 4 islands away, or you're traveling from the shores to the peak of a high mountain. Costs 2 to 3 days. Create a 6-crescent moon. Far shores, even further, create an 8-crescent moon. Distant shores, the furthest possible, you're either traveling from the southern tip of Rusunaga, the Vitani region, to the far north footsteps of the gods, the Utangud region, or you're traveling from the island of Kalanwan to the Sheath, or even Baliku. Can cost an entire moon's worth of travel. Create a 12-crescent moon. For each segment of the journey that forwards your travel, roll the most relevant action as established. On a success with advantage, fill in 2 crescents. Otherwise, just fill in 1. If you suffer a failure with setback, you are blown off track, something bad happens, you lose something, or you get lost, look to the Umagalad. There's also a bit of an aside that you could use a hex grid if need be, and this sort of roll for travel thing, I did see a slightly more detailed variant of this kind of mindset in the One Ring, although that was more concerned with legs. Let's see. After that is raids, and I can hear the people who have MMO thinking reeing in the background.
Yep. I mean, The raids are an integral part of a Kadunganan's life. Raids are bursts of action and drama that have you traveling deeper into a place that you are raiding to gain wealth, treasure, something important, or prestige. Why you're doing it is up to you. Raids are the equivalent of dungeon delving in Gubat-Banwa. Structured approaches to journeying into dangerous places. Usually these raids are other settlements, but sometimes larger raids can take place in mass ritual burial cemeteries, ancient forests, cave complexes, cities, and even heaven and hell themselves. I like that last one. Dungeons and large ancient abandoned temples of course exist. The constant cycles of violence create ruin after ruin that pock the islands. And then you roll a d8, and if you want to randomize, you can get settlements, large towns, abandoned cave complexes, mass burial complexes, ancient forests, cities, a metropole, or heaven or hell. There's also a section about raiding objectives, where it decides what your objective is using a d10, and that's wealth, people, revenge, trial, and artifact or VIP. Raids are a gauntlet of encounters, both combat and non-combat, that a Nuamala god puts you through to test your mettle. Put down a raiding moon, a larger moon for a longer raid. Each crescent represents an encounter that must be surmounted. A failed encounter or consequence puts down a tooth, which encircles the moon. When the moon is encircled by 3 teeth, the moon is consumed and the raid ends. A raiding warband must retreat or suffer consequences. Commonly, this represents reinforcements arriving, supplies running out, warriors getting exhausted, or the raided village finding a second wind. And then the random encounters are decided with a d12, and you can get a non-martial encounter, a martial encounter, something interesting, a twist in the raid, something that might upend the understanding of the raid or recontextualize the objective, an item or treasure, perhaps anting, or penultimate. You find something harrowing, something that is connected to the goal, perhaps. And that leads us into downtime.
Mm-hmm. Downtime is exactly that. In times of respite, you can only go into downtime when you are not venturing. You must not be in a raid, and you must be in a point of light. When you enter downtime, heal 1 wound, provided there's time for you to heal, and then you can do 2 downtime actions. You do not need to use up all your downtime actions, these are simply suggestions. If you wish to freely roleplay, otherwise known as free play during downtime, feel free. Downtime actions should still follow the fiction. You should feasibly be able to do the downtime event you want to do in the point of light you're in. Then we have several examples of downtime actions. First being dance with hearts and thoughts. You know, spending intimate time with a character.
Yep.
We also have dive into complications. Choose yourself and 2 more people. Following the fiction, the 3 of you fall into a complication. Define what it is. The context of your complication might have been because something that happened outside of downtime. And then hunt, which is a role as if you're hunting or fishing with an appropriate difficulty. On a success, gain 3 raw meat. Roll with advantage. Find 1 raw meat. Setback. Find 2 raw meat, but you lose something. An item, your passion, your conviction, change it. Someone's debt to you, or something important to you. Failure, you find no meat. If you choose not to give any of your hunting spoil to the gods of the forest which you hunted in, you incur the wrath of the gods, which will befall... there shouldn't be an S there. You at the worst possible time.
It looks like there's a lot of... These are a lot of different non-combat interactions that they're discussing.
Mm-hmm.
You've got feasts in which you have a social interaction that you'll either lose or gain things there. You've got marketplace stuff that'll allow you to find some items specifically, but other things may happen. You've got one that's literally just a social outing, and you meet someone. But then you also get a section about retraining. Provided you have the proper teachers and it follows the established fiction, you can retrain your entire Kadungganan as if they were brought back to Legend 0, choosing any discipline to begin with, and then grow in Legend until the Legend they retrained at. This means that if you retrain at Legend 6, you start at Legend 0 and then grow in Legend until Legend 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a section about switching disciplines. You can also willingly change your active discipline into any discipline, as long as you have at least one signature technique learned from that discipline. As always, keep in mind that switching a style also means having to recalibrate muscle memories, as well as having to deal with any fallouts from your previous master. All disciplines require a master, Guro, to learn, which sometimes only come to when you have enough honor for the Guro to find you worth it to teach. When you switch disciplines, choose a new discipline and take that discipline's attributes and inflict violences. You keep any signature techniques that you already know, however, you must already have a signature technique from that discipline to change into it. And there's this last downtime thing about literally going around the town listening to talk to get info.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, leads us into consumables, Monk. You still there, Monk?
Yep, I am still here.
Consumables are various items that, once used, are gone. These are things like foods, elixirs, potions, wonders, and other such items. These are important when going out on adventures. Usually, they can provide important benefits when dealing with such a turbulent world. What follows is a list of consumables, including where they can be most commonly found. They are cheapest, that is, costing the lowest amount of items to barter with, in the places where they are most commonly found. In violence, unless otherwise stated, each effect just costs a single interact beat.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got various items, healing potions, different resistance items for elemental damage types,
Mm-hmm.
Items that remove status conditions, items which inflict elemental damage, items that buff or debuff. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. I will admit my OCD is a little bit triggered in the fact that they're not alphabetically listed.
It looks like they're categorically listed, and even then, not very well.
If it's categorically listed, at the very least, make clear the categories.
Yeah, that's why I said not very well. But I think with that, we have finished the how to play a Kadungganan chapter there.
Yeah. Now there is the question of, because we managed to get through that in less than an hour, of should we cover the Kadungganan chapter, which does go into character creation, or if that's something we should leave for another week.
I don't see that we have anything listed in the schedule for covering the Kadungganan chapter elsewhere, Monk.
So given that, I think we can integrate that, since after this we would be diving into the disciplines, and that's where we're getting into the closest equivalent of classes. So I think we should dip into Kadungganan creation for this episode.
I don't see a creation method in this chapter.
That's because it isn't. It's on page. It starts on page 114. Remember what I said earlier? We're playing a Kadungganan, and Kadungganan itself are separate sections in the book.
I know. I'm on the Kadungganan section Oh, I don't like how that's split. That makes me sad.
Yeah, it is. It's on page 116.
I see that. I assume we do not want to go into detail regarding the skills and everything else.
No, we would save that for. We really don't go into detail on skills usually because a lot of times there isn't much to say unless it's a very specific non-standard skill or a skill that has
Mm-hmm.
its own special mechanics.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, uh, on the actual chapter about Kadungganan, um, we have this spread that I really don't like how that's laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Let me find the button if I can find it. Yes, that button right there. Oh no, that button is gross. It was gross. Ah, there we go. The character creation pages, when put together, look like a ripple of water in a
Mm-hmm.
lake, and it says, "Every legend arises from silence. Fire whooshes alive, dark illuminated. You are born, yet you are not Kadunganan. How can you be? Kadunganan are forged. The nature of the world is that it acts and you react. The world acts to create you. What do? Take that step. You wake in the world of pattern. You are surrounded in the golds and palm leaves of your home. We begin with those that birthed you. Who were your parents? Find out what folk, great cultures, and professions they had. Your parents' folk determine what you might look like right now. Your parents' great cultures determine what great culture you might be born into, or you can choose your own destiny. Finally, your parents' professions must be picked from their great culture. You gain those professions' skills. All knowledge is inherited in the Sword Isles. Then look at your right hand and your left hand and then your heart. Who are you? What is the first thing you do with your bare feet in the river of life? The wisps of memory fly by you. Who are you really? What have you lost? Whose blade belongs on your throat? Choose your great culture either from one of your parents or one of your choice. Following your great culture's tables, find out in order your homeland, social class, first life event and second life event, cultural keepsake, your own profession, third life event, your faith, and your specialization, which allows you to assign 4 extra points to any skills that you have, though none of the skills can go beyond 5 during Kadunganan creation. And then, of course, it also notes life events are not found in your great culture, but in a separate section. The demon of life stands before you, bulging-eyed, ogre-fanged, stardust-skinned. Pick up your weapon. You scintillate with rosy gold merit. Choose a discipline. You gain that discipline's philosophy and inflict violences. You do not start with any signature techniques nor onting. That belongs to those with legend. Then you have 4 points to spread across your 4 prowesses. None of them can go above 3 during creation. Then pick up a weapon you commit violence with and define what armor you wear to guard your liver. Your weapon decides what kind of harm you deal when you commit violence. Your armor lets you weather more direct hits, but alters what you are vulnerable to. The ogre grins. Who are you? Declare your name. Let it rip emptiness. Define yourself against it. You are smokeless flame. Choose a name from your culture or make one of your own and say why that. Why that? The demon is defeated and you find that it is you. Claim your prize, your heart. Define a single conviction, why you fight. Then write down 3 passions which you will defend with the ardor of a dying dog. Then find out your rasi, your star sigils, on your solar, lunar, and sidereal aspects. Finally, establish a complication. If solo, both blanks may be NPCs. Will the world know your name? Remember, Kadunganan, only those that dare raise their heads are decapitated. Begin at Legend 0 with 5 honor and 1 thunderbolt, then your Kadunganan awakes. If your Kadunganan has a warband, proceed to warband creation. That's a very artistic way to describe character creation. That's not very common. You've seen it a few places, but it's actually not very common to see that.
Mm-hmm. So, but so after that come skills. There are 16 skills. Each one begins at 1, representing a baseline capability, and they go up to 8. And we do have a ranking of them. 1 is novice, 2 is skilled, 3 is adept, 4 is advanced, 5 is expert, 6 is master, 7 is grandmaster, 8 is supreme. The skills can be organized into 4 groups based on the social classes found across all of the great cultures: royalty, freeman, wise folk, and worker. Royalty skills are art, control, poetry, and wrath. Freeman skills are beauty, grace, might, and resolve. Wise folk skills are occult, psalm, ritual, and sensitivity. Worker skills are observation, tenderness, toughness, and judgment.
Interesting.
Proficiency in each skill covers both the practice of it and the knowledge of it. For example, having points in control might mean you're good at governing and have a large pool of knowledge about governing and politics.
So I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think many of these skills are somewhat self-explanatory,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be some we need to go into.
Yeah, control is controlling your emotions, whereas wrath is being able to act upon your emotions.
Well, being able to act upon your ultra-violent rage, as it
Mhm.
says in one sentence.
Mm-hmm. Um, obviously, grace is the equivalent of dexterity. Someone who's good with their hands. I think I used grace to replace dexterity in one of my old projects that I never finished. I might revisit that down the road. Might is self-explanatory. Resolve is also self-explanatory. Then on the wise folk end, I do like that there's a color coding for the skills. We have occult, which is the truths about the things you're not supposed to know. That man is not meant to know. You know, things about the secrets of the natural world, things about demons and gods and alchemies, all of that stuff that tends to have you living out in a hut outside the village.
Mm.
Um, then we have Psalm. This one I do think I'd want to read out.
Yep.
The Sword Owls collects and archives tradition, culture, and knowledge in story and song. Thus, to know the Sword Owls is to know its harmony, to be part of its chorus, and to know the intricacies of its peons.
Pains.
Sorry.
Paeans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually think that's a diphthong, and you would say paeans, but it's still.
Yep.
It's a word not many people use, except for nerds like me who like words.
Mm-hmm. Then ritual is knowing about the rituals of the Sword Owls. Sensitivity is
your is your sensitivity to the supernatural, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
To at least the natural supernatural.
Yeah. Observation, self-explanatory. Tenderness is the ability to connect with others. Toughness, self-explanatory. Judgment is also self-explanatory.
There is a small thing back up top where it says each skill is a particular proficiency and a particular learned ability. While there are 16 in all, which color and guide the intended play that can be found as a Kadungganan in Gubat-Banwa, as well as covers around a large gamut of attempted actions in Gubat-Banwa, do not feel constrained to them. You can add new skills as needed or interpret each skill liberally. Use these to your advantage. Do not let them limit you. So, don't feel bad if you don't have all the skills. This is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into the folk, which, the folk are the peoples that you can descend from. They're all sorts, though. And there's a note here: none of the folk are pure. Every folk has ancestry with other folk. That is the truth of all things. Some Kawayanon have cat ears. Some Pilandokan have snake eyes. Some Pak-an look like Naga. Some Iro are very lupine, while others look close to Kawayanon.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to live as a frog folk or hornbill folk, feel free. These are just to inspire you. And it's going to go over the six races, which are the Kawayanon, the Iro, the Kamikam, the Laksaman, the Pilandokan, and the Pak-an.
Who they describe as bamboo folk, dog folk, cat folk, monkey folk, deer folk, and bird folk.
I'm guessing bamboo folk is the closest to normal human stock.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I see what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, each of these folk, the Kawayanon do look most like humans. The Iro are dogs of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
That's especially prevalent with that what looks to be a Shih Tzu down there.
Is it possible to say Shih Tzu without snickering?
Yes, I do it all the time.
Is it also possible to say mini haha without laughing?
I'm not answering that question. I know that trick. We have a buff muscle mommy Catwoman. I approve.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a thin, near Sun Wukong looking monkey man,
as well as a larger monkey folk who
she's a gorilla, and she is she.
Definitely on both ends, and for whatever reason keeps reminding me of the ape titan. I think it's that expression.
Yeah. I mean, they are ape and monkey people, so.
Mm-hmm.
The deer folk are nice. I like them. They're pretty.
Mm-hmm.
As for the bird folk, do you know what they remind me of?
What?
The Rito. At least partly.
I could see it. Then we have the Great Cultures. This is basically where your Kadungganan hails from. There's a bit of a note about culture not being ethnicity.
And that no culture is better than any other.
Mm-hmm.
And this basically, I think, determines, not only what cultures they came from and what culture you could come from, but it actually describes what actual Mahamandala you might be from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it goes into details about each of the 6 great cultures, those being the Gatusanan, who are from the Gatusan Rajanate, the Apunan, which are from the Apumbukid Confederation, the Kamutan, which are from one of the allied Banwa of the Apumbukid Confederation, because the Apunan is from the 5 central Kadatuan of the Apumbukid Confederation. There's the Akayu, which are from the Akai Sultanate, the Verban Wenyo, that come from the Verbunwa Lakanate, and the Buenense, or Baenense, excuse me, from the oldest kingdom known as Ba'e. There is no war in Ba'e, monk. But these, what these different profiles do is give you naming conventions, honorifics, character quirks you might have, such as with this example with the Gatusanon, you're prone to song, and the Datu or Raja must always be respected unless you have the strength to do otherwise. All loot must be shared with the Datu. Respect those with skill. Fuck with others.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm being attacked.
Yep.
But it also gives the impressions of other cultures that your culture may have, and it has a story about your history
Yep.
and traditions,
As well as
even
noteworthy individuals and one of 8 potential homelands, which you can roll for randomly.
Yep. And those
Each.
homelands give you different things.
Yep.
Such as looking at here's what I'll do. I will appeal to the monk today. Where is it? Yes. Pangala or Pangla. You can speak Panglawanan, start with a tasseled ceremonial spear, and gain +1 to your poetry, control, psalm, and grace. Everyone knows how I appealed to the monk, right? The monk knows how I appeal to the monk.
Yep.
For sure. And then, of course, you can roll your professions or your parents' professions, which give you additional skill points to certain skills. And this looks to be the case. And then you also go with your social class, which gives you +1 to all skills of a specific grouping, such as worker, wiseman, fremen, etc. It looks like in the Gatusanon social classes, you're more likely to be a worker or royalty than you are a fremen or wise folk. So you have 2 different chances to get a social class that gives you worker skills or royalty skills, and only 1 class for fremen or wise folk skills.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, they give you a set of starting cultural keepsakes, and then it moves to the next great culture in the list, and you get this essentially the same stuff: their histories, their notable people, like. As an Apunan, keep in mind you are well acquainted with the movements and breaths of harmony. Corrective action must be followed to heal harmony. The spirits prefer the cold, unsalted, and quiet. Scrutinize disharmony. Reprimand those that defile nature. Oh God, they're druid priests, monk. But it's the same layout for most of these. Different homelands, different professions, different social classes, and cultural keepsakes. And it's for all 6 of the great cultures that were described at the beginning. Yeah. It's a very long section.
When it comes to these cultures, we will be getting into detail on each of them through the discipline systems, because each of them has a unique set of disciplines in a way that's going to be very familiar to people who have played say Lancer, and how the Mechs and Lancer were divided into the stylings of different companies.
Yeah,
it's the same principle.
Yeah. And then after the great culture stuff, we get to the list of life events, and it looks like a lot of these life events give you small things to start with. For example, one of them turns your hair white. Some of them indebt you to other people. Some people indebt others to you. There are a lot of small things here that are little flavors, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of them. There's 100. You would roll D percentile for this.
Yep. So, and of course, we're not going to go through each of the of the entries.
I like number 99. A stray bullet lodged itself into your head. You can now sometimes see the gods in their invisible forms.
Mm-mm.
I would say that that's more heavy metal poisoning from the bullet's lead, but well, we don't know if the bullets in this game are lead.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a short list of complications,
And they're
which,
kind of Mad Libby.
yeah, there's a total of 50 example ones. So you could just roll a D100 and half it. In fact, that's exactly what it says. I am glad that they're here because complications is going to be one of those blank checks.
I like number 35. Blank asked me to kill them so they couldn't get married to Blank. That's pretty dramatic.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a similar list of convictions, although the list in that case is much shorter. It's only 12 ones, but it's
Well,
enough to
and
give kind of an idea about what convictions are supposed to be.
and as it was originally described, convictions are long-reaching and broad,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not super specific.
And each of the conviction entries give a lot of questions. Like, for
Which is
example,
the point.
loyalty. Whether it be for their blood or for their heart, the reason I fight is to stay true to the one who owns my soul.
And that there's a bunch of things that a good GM right there with that one conviction can throw that character through multiple character arcs. That right there is a minefield of how much can I fuck with you today?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Did I reveal my entire ethos as GM? Huh? As if it hasn't been obvious this entire time, people? No. The passions are the shortest section, even though you're supposed to have 3 or 4 of them, or like 3 of them, and work with them. But that's because the passions are, yeah, you always have 3. Define them in quotes. They're the beliefs and ideals you hold dear, but unlike your convictions, they're not the reason for fighting, but reasons to live. And passions are more fluid than convictions. Because they're more fluid and can change more often, there's a short list of examples. None love durian more than I. Wow, that person must have no friends because they would smell awful all the
Oh,
time. Durian fruit is delicious, but
oh
that
God,
smell.
the smell.
That smell, man. I think that's the real reason Oren had no friends in Gaim. Pierre Oren Alfonso.
Oh.
Yeah. Beauty is something not everyone sees enough of. All violence must be a last resort. As long as I can speak, I can spur others into victory. I will never serve a king. All slaves shall be freed. Reverence to the gods must take primacy, lest the world destroys us. I hate being alone. I will never want to be alone. Those are some interesting examples,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not um they're not as specific as some of the other examples that that the previous sections have. I find it kind of lacking. we've got a bunch of blank check design here with the complications, convictions, and passions, and both complications and convictions have a fantastic amount of depth to them to see how well defined they are. Passions almost felt like an afterthought in this case.
Mm-hmm. Then there's faiths, which you can choose um, one of the approaches to belief that's present here, or roll a d10 for it. Then there is the Rasi or astral sigils. Every folk is born under a particular omen. Many of them are astral sigils, Rasi, or just sigils, and so are Kadungganan as well. In the Sword Isles, these ideals arrived with the arrival of Ashinin missionaries and the Agma Damlang warrior merchants who brought with them the ideals of Jyotisha, or astromancy, which integrated with local culture's use of the sky for sailing, hunting, traveling, and divining future events. More local terms can be found further out of mandala centers. Manalala, dealer of stars in Bananis. Manalagna, diviner of stars in Gatusanan languages. And Kifavela, star dog chaser in Vuyu, a
Kifa Vefa.
Kifaveva, sorry, in Vuyu, a Kamutan town. Then you, to help round out your demeanor and personality, roll d12 or choose thrice. Each one corresponds to your solar aspect, lunar aspect, and sidereal aspect. Your solar aspect defines your overall attitude and spirit, your drive and vim, your inner nature, that ego that binds you to all. Your lunar aspect defines things unseen in you, the deep wants, the shadow, the things you cannot allow others to see. Remember that those you love must see all of you to love all of you. Your sidereal aspects defines how you carry yourself, your vibe, the energy you release into the world, how you connect with others, and more. Sometimes an even more important aspect. Finally, you and the situations where folk find themselves are the final arbiters and molders of their personality. Material conditions are more impactful than the say of the stars. The sages always say the pull of the earth is greater than that of the sky. Remember, you will die.
Memento Mori? What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then it gives the D12 example.
Yep. The 12 star signs.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that Naga is the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hey, there's yours, monk. Tima Pina Maskan. Number 4.
The ceremonial spear.
Yep.
But after that is warband creation, and this is basically the why are these different Kadungganan part of a party.
Yep.
It's the first part of it is natures, which can be chosen from or rolling a d10 from lord and vassals, wandering warriors, servants of divinity, knights, and princes.
Yeah.
And so they can have their own but they can have their own benefits. Though when it talks about each one with lord and vassals, it talks about one being the Datu and the other being the Datu's warriors. It does carry the implication that of a certain number of parties, a certain number of party members. Though I'd end up asking the question: what if you've got more than the 5 that are present here?
Maybe you'd make up another thing for them to be.
Mm-hmm. Then wandering warriors, it outright states you've got a boat and 5 horses. Servants of Divinity, you would choose a religious sect that you follow, which can grant its own benefits. Knights, where you would choose the Datu you serve, and that's a D10 roll. Princes, which it outright states this is the most difficult warband nature if you're starting off.
Yep, because it might most likely will jump you into intense politics immediately.
Mm-hmm. Although some of you may look at that and say, "Don't threaten me with a good time."
And some of you may look at that and say, "Huh, that's just one half of L5R."
Pretty much.
Feels like being in the Imperial Court in L5R.
And I will note that with each one, there's a short list of example names that could be given to the warband, and they all end with "make one up."
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, here's some examples, but also, just make up your own.
Yeah.
Because, well, they want you to make what yours is yours.
Mm-hmm. And lastly is progression, and I'll let you take that.
Alrighty. Every Kadungganan must cultivate their legend. Legend represents a Kadungganan's combat prowess and ability, strength, skill, experience, fame, and rising glory. As they rise in legend, they will find more and more things about themselves, as well as the various martial arts of Gubat-Banwa. When a Kadungganan returns to downtime from an adventure, their legend grows by 1. This happens despite whatever might have happened during the adventure. If they committed dishonorable acts during the adventure, then that is how villains are born. They gain 2 points to add to skills. No skill can go above 8. Gain 2 points to add to prowesses. No prowesses can go above 8 in this manner. Meaning there are ways to push them past 8 in other manners. Gain +1 honor. Gain +2 to your posture. You keep these posture gains even when switching disciplines. Gain a signature technique from any discipline of your choice that you can feasibly learn in the fiction. If you're growing into an odd-numbered legend, gain 1 Anting Anting. And it says, legend starts at 0 and ends at 12, wherein they are very capable of attaining glory. It talks about retraining. It says, Kadungganan are a fickle lot, and they are perfectly capable of changing anything about themselves, provided they spend the time to do so. Retraining is often done with the retraining downtime action, which lets them change any aspect about themselves as long as they have a willing guro. It also talks about how at Legend 0, your warrior may not even yet be a Kadungganan, because you're a nobody.
Mm-hmm.
When you rise to Legend 1, you gain 1 Anting Anting and the first signature technique of your active discipline. You start with 1 Anting Anting at the first legend. You gain 1 new Anting Anting at every odd legend, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. You cannot equip more Anting Anting than half of your legend. Mm-hmm. And then there are the ranks for the glory path. And there are 3 realms to a growing legend: the warrior, the hero, and the king. Many do not reach the king. The first rank is warrior, and it encompasses legends 0 to 4. At this stage, the Kadungganan have trained their skills, but don't have much combat experience of their own. They must go out there and make their names known. They can perform the following: working for various Datu as free-roaming mercenaries, performing various jobs for the Datu of their own settlement, traveling across the lands accruing wealth and legend that they did not have, trying to break free from tyrannical overlords. At rank 2, we have heroes. Rank 2 encompasses legend 5 through 8. They cannot sit idly by. Their inherent gahum pushes them forward. Their innate spiritual power calls them to perform greater and greater deeds, or else die in the cycle of violence. Some examples of what they might be doing are establishing their own community, no matter how small, fighting against powerful Datu with large settlements or towns, venturing deep into hitherto untraveled paths like the deep forests, the floor of the ocean, the cave to the underworld, and even the clouds, making a name for themselves as their titles are writ across the isles, and more Datu chase after them. There's a section that says, the refined form. At rank 2, a Kadungganan must have a physical change known as their refined form. Something about them has changed physically, representing the rising of their own abilities and the things they have faced in rank 1. And then finally, at rank 3, King. At this point, the Kadungganan are poised to fulfill that fabled verse, "Seize heaven's thunderclaps." Rank 3 encompasses legend 9 through 12 and showcases them not at the end of their venturing days, but rather at their peak. They are on the cusp, perhaps, of glory, liberation from the wheel of violence, manifesting in visages of god kings and devil witches, attainment of the demeanors of actual Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Some examples of what the Kadungganan are meant to do: running their own settlements that can become Mahamandala of their own right, wrestling with legendary monsters and creatures of myth, preventing celestial eaters from eating either the sun or the moon, fighting with gods and demons and bringing them to heel, or maybe even becoming gods themselves by dying in glorious combat, enacting long-lasting change about Gubat-Banwa, perhaps even contributing to the end or even ending the cycles of violence. Travel to the ends of the world to fight against distant warriors, killing the Pale and other alien monstrosities to protect Gubat-Banwa. And then they have the perfected form. A king rank Kadungganan will have changed drastically from who they were at rank 1, and this represents their skills at its utmost peak. Here they are meant to match gods and goddesses with their visages, manifestations of wrathful deities. At rank 3, a Kadungganan gains a final name, one which they will be remembered for the rest of time.
As an aside, I do like that we have a character arc trilogy that kind of represents this path.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely the path, and you can tell because the tattoos on the arms and legs are the same between each character art.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but that more or less covers character creation. It definitely has the vibe of a lot of Blades in the Dark style character creation, where it's or similar narrativist games where you have a series of choices or a series of role opportunities.
Mm.
This does mean that one could utilize the system here for a die roll approach. That being said, um, I think that when it comes to how I feel about character creation, that's really going to be something that'll have to determine once we get a feel for the disciplines and how they work, especially in how they work in relation with the glory path. But things are certainly off to a good start. As far as the die roll system, I am glad to see that the Lonely D12 is getting some love here because it's the primary dice that you're going to be using. The whole thing of difficulty being semi-random through the D8s, that I'm a little bit iffy on.
Mm-hmm.
If only because when people want to take actions, they want to have some understanding of the kind of risk that they would be taking. So as far as doing that, I'm not entirely sure if I'd be okay with that level of unpredictability when it comes to the baseline difficulty.
I'm not sure we'll be able to know more about how that works until we get more into maybe conflict resolution itself and the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Setting those difficulties there might be ways to shift that other than with thunderbolts.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that we have two forms of extra effort mechanics. I know some people are going to look at that and scream meta narrative or some other buzzword. Like, get your head out of your ass, man. These things are. This is going to happen when you're dealing with a game of high drama.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to blame anyone for the introduction of meta narrative or what have you, blame Amber. It's just a pet peeve where I've seen people turn away just using the term meta narrative mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
uh, or that they're somehow too gamist. And I'm like, you're playing a game, so that remark is kind of dumb. But that is going to do it for this particular uh, episode of Valley of the Judged. Next week, we will be diving headfirst into the disciplines proper. And it is going to create some interesting setup because we're going to be doing that over several weeks. Since each of the great cultures has their own short list of disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I made the Lancer comparison earlier. There's also the fact that we have to go way into the back of the book for them because the disciplines are in the compendium section in the far end. But there are 5 subtypes of disciplines we'll be going through over the course of 5 weeks. Obviously, factoring in the one shots, and each of them has a few ranks. They're not. I would hesitate to call the disciplines classes in the traditional sense. Especially since the amount of stuff that you'd get on it is not the same as, say, a dozen or so levels in a class in most class-based affairs.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that will be interesting once we get to it. But with that said, that's going to do it for this. I will hopefully see you all later on when I visit Theo's library. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.